Hi there. I'm Cindy Linden, and this is the Cook Along podcast. I have a recipe here for chai-spiced cheesecake muffins. Cheesecake, I'm sure, will catch your attention. You may not be familiar with chai. Chai is derived from the Hindu word for tea, which is cha. So when you ask for a chai at, say, your favorite neighborhood coffee shop, what you're asking for is tea, quite specifically spiced with a lot of wonderful warm things that make the drink cozy. My youngest child is a barista, and that's where I first learned about chai. It would be made either warm or iced with a sweetened syrup made from a lot of ginger and cinnamon and cardamom and fennel and maybe a little black pepper just to add a little spice and all kinds of other things that could be in it. And then it would get put in a cup with some milk or cream of the tea sipper's choice, oat milk or almond milk or regular milk or whole milk. And it's wonderful to kind of perk you up and soothe you all at the same time because of all these wonderful spices. So this recipe takes those same wonderful spices and turns it into something even better, which is a muffin that has a little center of vanilla cheesecake filling. These are extraordinary. I mean, you can't keep your eyes open while you're eating one because you just want to close your eyes and savor it. Your mouth, your friends, your family, they're all going to thank you for making this recipe for them. I'm thinking that this is great for breakfast, great for mid-morning, great for afternoon snack, great for dessert. It's not a cupcake, and yet to have the cheesecake in the middle of a muffin kind of makes it a dessert. Your ingredient list is easy enough, except for one possible ingredient that could give you a little trouble. It is 1 3/4 cups of all-purpose flour, 2 teaspoons of cinnamon, a half teaspoon of ground ginger, a half teaspoon of ground cardamom, and that one could give you some trouble because it's an expensive spice. It is one of the most expensive spices in the world. So you might have trouble finding it in your grocery store. I know that Penzeys Spices carries it, and you can get little jars as well as big jars. It is a spice that's really fun to have around the house because sometimes the tiniest pinch in some baked good will make just enough difference that people can't tell why it's better, but they know it is. I've used it in all kinds of fun things, but just a tiny pinch, not enough to really identify. In this, with a half teaspoon, you're going to identify it. And I hope you can find some to use this for because it's really an important ingredient in this recipe. You also need a half teaspoon of nutmeg, a teaspoon of baking soda, a half teaspoon of salt, 2 cups of applesauce. That doesn't have to be anything fancy because while it certainly adds flavor, it's also providing the moisture for these muffins. So a can or a jar of your simple store brand applesauce is going to be fine, but you do need 2 cups of it. 1 1/4 cups of brown sugar, 2 large eggs, a teaspoon of vanilla extract, a half a cup of vegetable oil. And then for the cheesecake filling, you're going to need 8 ounces of cream cheese. And I'm going to use a Neufchâtel because I figure less fat is always better, and I like the fact that it's not quite as stiff. 1/4 cup of granulated sugar, another teaspoon of vanilla extract. Your equipment, you need a large bowl for the dry ingredients. You need another large bowl for the wet ingredients. You need a medium bowl for the cheesecake filling. You need a 12-cup muffin tin, and either paper liners for that or nonstick spray for that. I just found these cool silicone sleeves that fit into the muffin cup. They're kind of expensive. They came from food52.com, but they are wondrous. You don't have to spray them, and you don't have to fight to get the cupcakes or muffins out of the tin. I suggest you look for them if you feel inspired to spend some money because they're, like I said, they're not cheap, but wonderful things. And you need a toothpick because we're going to do some swirling with the toothpick. Not a lot, but a little bit. Your do-aheads are only two. You need to preheat your oven to 375 degrees, and you need to bring your 8 ounces of cream cheese to room temperature, which means it needs to sit out for a little while. I have not done that with mine, so it'll be kind of better because it's a Neufchâtel, which is already softer, but I'm going to try the same trick I do with butter cubes. It's still wrapped in its foil wrapper here. I'm going to put it in my pocket for a bit while I assemble some of the rest of these ingredients and see if I can warm it up. And yes, it's cold, but it'll be a lot happier to work with when I put it in the bowl once it's warmed up a little bit. So your oven is preheating, and we're going to start with the dry ingredients for the muffin batter. In your first large bowl, you want to put the flour and measure that in the usual cook-along way, which is aerate the flour, stir it up, and then scoop it into the measuring cup with a spoon and level it off with the handle of the spoon. And if you want to, you can get all these ingredients ready ahead of time so that all you have to do is pour them into the bowl together. That's the smart way to do it. That doesn't mean that's what I do, but it is the right and easiest way to do it. It's just, I don't have that kind of patience, but I'm not saying you shouldn't. You absolutely should. If you can get all your ingredients out on the counter before you start anything at all, this is so much easier and faster. With the flour in the bowl and all over the floor, now we're going to add 2 teaspoons of cinnamon. And I think you don't want a hugely overpowering one. I would not use a Saigon cinnamon unless you cut back on it a little bit because you want the other spices in here to have a shot at being tasted. I'm using a blend from Penzeys that does have some Saigon cinnamon in it, but it's a mix of other things as well. 2 teaspoons of that. Then you need your ground ginger and a half teaspoon of that. Ginger is probably the predominant spice in most chai syrup mixes. And I don't know that you can buy those syrups. I think that the coffee shops can buy them in huge quantities, but it might be a little harder for you to find it. So if you find you develop a real affection for spiced chai, you may become a regular at your coffee shop. A half a teaspoon of the cardamom. This is a lot of cardamom for a recipe. I can't think of anything I've used this much cardamom in. So it also is going to be a pretty strong flavor. Half teaspoon of nutmeg, and that you can do either already ground or shave it yourself from fresh nutmeg. I am doing pre-ground, it's just easier. And then the stuff that's sort of your workhorse, your baking soda. A whole teaspoon of that goes into this bowl, and a half a teaspoon of salt, which you absolutely want because it'll help make the sweetness in here just a little perkier. All right, take your fork and you just whisk that together. And then save your fork because we're going to use it also again 2 more times actually. All right, bowl number 2 now. And this is for your wet ingredients. Meanwhile, I'm going to take the cream cheese and move it to my other pocket with the other side in toward my body because the first side of my skin is now too cold to warm it up. All right, 2 cups of applesauce. I'm using an unsweetened applesauce from Trader Joe's because, again, you will absolutely get some apple flavor out of this, which is appropriate to the recipe. As you might be able to tell from the spices that all go well with apple. But it doesn't need sugar in it because we're about to add quite a lot of sugar, which is the next ingredient. We want 1 1/4 cups of packed brown sugar. So I'm doing the 1/4 cup first, and you can just put it in with the applesauce. Pack it down. That's how you measure it. Be sure it's packed tightly. There goes the 1/4 cup in. And yes, this is kind of a lot of brown sugar, which, you know, in my book, that's a good thing. I think brown sugar is one of those ingredients that when I see it in a recipe, especially when it's with cinnamon, I always think, oh, that'll be good. 1 1/4 cups go in the bowl with the applesauce. And then your 2 large eggs, which I'm going to, since I have a dirty measuring cup here already that had the applesauce in it, rather than cracking my eggs into the bowl of stuff, I'm going to do them into this measuring cup, which is what I should always do, but almost never do. That way you don't get any shell in your mixture. And if anything's wrong with the eggs, you find out before you ruin everything else in the bowl. So those get dumped in, and then your vanilla. I don't know if vanilla is a component of chai as a beverage, but I think I would not be surprised if it was. If it isn't, it seems like a really good idea to me. A teaspoon of vanilla. That's another one of those ingredients. You put it with brown sugar and cinnamon, you know it's going to be good, right? And then the final ingredient here, which I'm going to use the same measuring cup for that I used for the applesauce and cracking the eggs, is a half cup of vegetable oil. I'm using canola oil because I don't trust a label that says vegetable. I don't know what's in there. And that then just gets dumped in that same bowl. And then that fork you were using to whisk the dry ingredients together. Now we're going to use it to whisk the wet ingredients together. Chop up those eggs and break up that brown sugar. Oh, yeah, see? This looks really good. That applesauce is going to add a lot of moisture to these muffins. And the oil doesn't really want to mix in very easily, and actually, the brown sugar is kind of staying lumpy as well. So this may take me a minute. So why don't we take a short break here? And when your wet ingredients are all mixed and the oil is mixed in and the lumps of the brown sugar are gone, come on back. Well, I'm not completely convinced that all the brown sugar lumps are out of this, but I guess I'll discover that when we put everything together, which happens now. So take that same fork, gradually add the dry ingredients into the wet ingredients, and stir it until the batter is thick and smooth. We've only used one fork. Now, granted, we're going to use 3 bowls for this recipe, but at least there aren't a lot of other utensils. And just stir it up until everything's mixed in and there aren't any lumps left. You don't need to work really hard at it, but you do want the dry ingredients incorporated. And that, my friends, is the muffin batter. Doesn't smell very much. That's interesting. I expected it to have a really strong, spicy smell, and it doesn't. Now we're going to make the cheesecake filling. So out of my pocket comes the cream cheese. Get it out of its wrapper and into the medium bowl. I think I might need a second fork for this, because I have the other one in the applesauce. You know what? Oh yeah, that's crazy. No, it certainly could be done, because all the ingredients are going to the same place, but I think this would be better if I don't get any of the muffin mix in it. That's me scraping the foil off, because you know how much of the cream cheese sticks to the foil. Now this filling's pretty simple, because unlike an actual cheesecake, there are no eggs in it. It's just the cream cheese and a 1/4 cup of regular granulated sugar and another teaspoon of the vanilla extract. And here's where we find out if the cream cheese was soft enough. And if you're using regular cream cheese, I do hope you waited and let it come to room temperature, because otherwise this is going to be really tricky, this next bit. Because what you're going to do is use that fork, for me a second fork, hopefully for you too, I just think it's a good idea, and smash it all together. Just kind of mix the cream cheese in with the sugar and the vanilla until it too is nice and smooth. And this, like I said, is a little harder to do because the cream cheese is stiff. Even my Neufchâtel that's been in my pocket. But you need to be able to scoop it up with a spoon, a tiny spoon. So it needs to be pretty soft and really well mixed. Now this smells good. Vanilla and cream cheese and sugar. You can't go wrong. You could just eat this with a spoon, but don't, because we need it. All right, we're almost done here. Now into your muffin tin. You're going to put about 1/4 cup of batter in each divot. And your batter's probably kind of starting to bubble a little bit. It started to become a little bubbly / foamy. Both of those words are an exaggeration, but it's doing something. You'll be able to see that chemical reaction of the baking soda starting to make things so they'll rise. And just keep going. This looks like way more batter than is going to fill my 12 muffin cups. Yeah, it's more like 15 easily. I think I'm just going to spray. I only have 12 of these fancy little muffin tin liner things. So I think the rest I'm going to spray a second muffin tin for that. I'm going to pretend there's 4 here. See what we get. It looks like it's going to be 3. So I've done the thing about 1/4 cup in each one, roughly. Some were maybe not quite as full, and some are a little more full than that, but close. And now I'm going to just scoop the last of that batter in with a rubber spatula, because I think it's going to be about the right amount. Gosh, it just does leave a tiny bit. All right, I'm going to fill a few of these just a little bit higher. All right, I got 15 this time. And that's all right with me. Now, this cheesecake filling stuff. You want to get a teaspoon. Cleaning out the fork on that one. Oh. Yeah, that's... Oh. All right, now I have to wash my hands, but that's definitely the flavor of cheesecake. That's really nice. All right, about a teaspoon of this gets put into the center of each of these muffins. That's not very much, and I suspect we're going to have more cheesecake and want to add it. But we'll see. Let's start with that amount because we don't want to find that we don't have enough for everybody. Dot this in and see where we get. Why don't I go away here for a minute and you can do the same. Just use your little measuring teaspoon. Oh, that one was more than that. There's my oven reaching temperature. Go do your dollop. If you want to see pictures of this and how to do it, you can just go check the website, thecookalongpodcast.com, and you'll see photos there of what I have done. If you end up with leftover filling, go back and put a little more in each one, and then come back to me because we have one more step before we can bake this. I just went back and looked at the recipe, and it's supposed to make 16 muffins. I wasn't paying attention to that and probably overfilled these. So I, as I said, have 15. And here is where your toothpick comes into play. Get your toothpick out, and you just want to kind of try to push that cheesecake around. It's kind of ridiculous because mine, at least, is not soft enough. But what you are trying to do is sort of swirl it around a little bit. Help it sink down into the middle. You're pretending to swirl it, okay? What I'm really doing is kind of chopping at it, pushing at it, poking at it, and persuading it to go down further into the cup. If I could swirl it, I would. But on the other hand, I kind of want that little ball of cheesecake in the middle. So I'm not going to work too hard at it, but I do need to get it down in a little bit. While I'm doing that, and you hopefully are doing it as well, I'm going to tell you what's left. Once these are all sort of swirled in as much as they're going to get, you're going to put this in your preheated 375-degree oven, and you're going to bake it for about 18 minutes. And I say about because the science isn't specific when everybody's oven's a little different. So you'll know they're done when you reach in there and with your finger kind of touch the top of a muffin and it springs back at you. It doesn't sink, it doesn't indent, it bounces back. That means it's time to take it out. They're also going to be a little bit brown around the sides, but of course your batter is already brown, so that's not your best way to judge whether they're done or not. And so at that point, about 18 minutes, go ahead and pull them out of your oven and let them sit for about 5 minutes before you try to do anything with them. And then they're all yours to enjoy. On the website, thecookalongpodcast.com, there will be pictures of these in their finished form, along with pictures of the various steps along the way. You might consider serving them with the Cook Along Podcast scrambled eggs, which you'll find in your podcast feed or on the website. Please tell a friend about this recipe or serve one of these to them and tell them that you learned about it on the Cook Along Podcast, where you can listen while you cook instead of trying to read a recipe or follow along with a video. Next time you go into a coffee shop, see if they have chai instead of ordering your usual coffee drink. Consider whether you want it warm or cold and give it a try. It really is both soothing and stimulating at the same time, as crazy as that sounds. But a good chai is worth your time and your nickel. I wish it was a nickel. Just remember to say chai, not may I have a chai tea, please, because that's asking for tea twice in the same sentence. And until next time, happy cooking!